Hello everyone and welcome back to Rambling Through History. My name is Jacob. Today, we're going to continue on with medieval December. And with this video, we're going to be talking about the Battle of Agincourt. A pretty big battle for Henry V and a great victory for the English over the French. Hopefully you guys go on to like this video, and with that, let's get on with the video. The 100 Years' War was a discontinuous conflict between England and France that spanned 2 centuries. At issue was the question of legitimate succession to the French crown as well as the ownership of several French territories. The struggle began in 1337 when King Edward III of England claimed the title of King of France over Philip IV and invaded Flanders. It continued as a series of battles, sieges, and disputes throughout the 14th century, with both the French and English variously taking advantage. When Henry V ascended to English crown in 1413, there had been a long hiatus in the fighting. A truce had been formally declared in 1396 that was meant to last 28 years, sealed by marriage of the French King Charles IV's daughter to King Richard II of England. However, a need to reassert his authority at home led King Henry V to renew English claims in France. England had been fought with political discord since Henry IV of the House of Lancaster had usurped the throne from Richard II in 1399. Since then, there had not been tension between the nobility and the royal house, widespread lawlessness throughout the kingdom, and several attempts on Henry V's life. The situation in England, coupled with the fact that France was weakened by its own political crisis, the insanity of Charles IV had resulted in a fight for power among the nobility, made it an ideal moment for Henry to press his claims. When the French rejected Henry's substantial territorial demands, he arrived in Normandy in August of 1415 with a force of about 12,000 men, and laid siege to the city of Harfleur. The city capitulated within 6 weeks, but the siege was costly. It lasted longer than Henry had anticipated, and his numbers were significantly diminished as a result of casualties, desertions, and disease. Departing from Harfleur on October 8th, Henry marched northward toward the English-held port of Calais, where he had disembarked for England, with a force of 1,000 knights and men-at-arms and 5,000 archers. Unable to cross the Somme River because of French defenses, he was forced to take a detour inland and cross further upstream. The delay allowed a large French force, led by the Constable Charles d'Albert and the Marshal Jean II Le Maigret, to intercept him near the village of Agincourt on October 24th. The English were not in ideal condition to fight a battle. They had been weakened by the siege at Harfleur and had marched over 200 miles, and many among them were suffering from dysentery. By most contemporary accounts, the French were also significantly larger than the English, though the exact degree of their numerical superiority is disputed. The common estimates put the English army at about 6,000, while the French army was probably consisted of 20 to 30,000 men. This suggests that the French could have been outnumbered the English 5-1. At least one scholar, though, puts the French army at no more than 12,000, indicated that the English were outnumbered 2-1. It seemed clear, however, that the English were at a great numerical disadvantage. Early in the morning on October 25th, 1415, Henry positioned his army for battle on a recently plowed field, bounded by woods. His men-at-arms were stationed in the center, flanked by wedges of archers who carried longbows that had an effective range of 250 yards, or 229 meters. The terrain favored Henry's army and disadvantaged its opponent, as it reduced the numerical advantage of the French army by narrowing the front. This would prevent maneuvers that might overwhelm the English ranks. Fighting commenced at 11 a.m. as the English brought their longbows within killing range, and the first line of French knights advanced, led by cavalry. The field that the French had to cross to meet their enemy was muddy after a weaker rain and slowed their progress, during which time they endured casualties from English arrows. When the first French line reached the English front, the cavalry were unable to overwhelm the archers, who had driven sharpened stakes into the ground at an angle before themselves. This was an innovative technique that the English had not used in the Battle of Crécy and Poitiers. Eventually, the archers abandoned their longbows and began fighting hand-in-hand with swords and axes alongside the men-at-arms. The next line of French knights had poured in and found themselves so tightly packed that they were unable to use their weapons effectively, and the tide of battle began to turn towards the English. As the English were collecting prisoners, a band of French peasants led by a local nobleman began plundering Henry's baggage behind the lines. Thinking it was an attack from the rear, Henry had the French nobles he was holding prisoner killed. The third line of the French army recoiled at the pile of corpses before them, and unable to make an effective charge, was then massacred swiftly. The battle probably lasted no longer than 3 hours and was perhaps as short as half an hour, according to some estimates. While the precise number of casualties is unknown, it is estimated that the English losses amounted to about 400 and the French losses to about 6,000, many of whom were noblemen. After the victory, Henry continued his march to Calais and arrived back in England in November to an outpouring of nationalistic sentiment. Contemporary accounts describe the triumphal pageantry with which the king was received in London on November 23rd, with elaborate displays and choirs attending his passage to St. Paul's Cathedral. The Agincourt chorale, dating from around this time and possibly written for Henry's reception in England, is a rousing celebration of what might have the might of the English. The effect of the victory on national morale was powerful. Agincourt came on back of the half a century of military failure and gave the English a success that repeated victories such as Crécy and Poitiers. Moreover, with this outcome, Henry V strengthened his position in his own kingdom and it legitimized his claim to the crown, which had been under threat after his ascension. Most importantly, the battle was a significant military blow to France and paved the way for further English conquests and successes. The French nobility, weakened by the defeat and divided among themselves, were unable to meet new attacks with effective resistance. Henry managed to subjugate Normandy in 1419, a victory that was followed by the Treaty of Troyes in 1420, with betrothed Henry to King Charles IV's daughter Catherine, and named him heir to the French crown. And with that will be the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for coming and joining me for the second video in Medieval December. This has been such a joy to research and take a look into medieval history. I hope you guys have enjoyed it too. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification. And once again, thank you guys so much, and I hope you have a wonderful day.